Okay, so the birth of the Whig Party, we're going to talk about today how that party came about. We've definitely heard this word before when we spoke about the Patriots and the Tories. The Whig group were what the Patriots call themselves, and it's an old word that comes from a political group in England that kind of went against the grain. And these Whigs that develop here, and Henry Clay, Webster, and Calhoun, the three amigos there, they are going to get together and, they don't agree with a lot of the things that Jackson is doing. They feel like he's using too much power with the executive branch, that he is with not renewing the charter for the National Bank. They are the Whig Party is going to start to form, and they are going to be against some of the things that Jackson's doing. Okay, Jackson, we know, is a Democratic Republican, and now that group is going by just the name Democrats. Okay, and we do know that Jackson is being credited with being the father of the modern Democratic Party, but note that he did not invent it. The Democratic Republicans have been around. He takes it, he's very much a common person from common, humble beginnings. The common people like him. He wants to represent what the common people need. However, don't be fooled. He does have a ton of money, and he does have some elite supporters as well. But overall, this idea of Democratic representation, representing the common man, is synonymous with Jackson and his embracing of the common people. Okay, so who else would be a Whig? So people who are supporters of Clay's American system. Somebody like John Quincy Adams is a supporter of the American system. That wasn't, the Whig Party wasn't around when he was running, but the ideals maybe were when he was running for president. You might even have people who are, look at John Calhoun. He is a Southern states rights person. Remember the nullification crisis, right? He is so much for Southern states' rights that he wanted to have South Carolina secede from the Union. So you have somebody like that. You have a Northern industrialist. John Quincy Adams is from the North. Merchants, and you have some very religious evangelical Protestants who get in there as well. They are ideally, in their ideals, conservative, but progressive when it comes to what they want to do for America as far as infrastructure, public works, schools, prisons, asylums. They feel that we need to do things for people and build this country up by doing those things. So think about Henry Clay and his American system. People would support that if they were a Whig at this point. Okay, what else do the Whigs like? They want a market economy, which is basically an economy based upon commerce and trade and manufacturing, that kind of a thing. We had talked briefly about the anti-Masonic party. The Freemasons are a secretive group that a lot of the founding fathers and presidents had belonged to. Jackson was a Freemason. He was part of the Masons group. So when he was running in his second election, there was an anti-Masonic party that wanted to put up a candidate against him, and their big thing was that they didn't feel that the Masons were a wholesome group. They thought it was too many secrets. It wasn't religious. What were they doing? So the party doesn't last. However, they say that, they want to spill the secrets of the Masons and all of this. So they were very anti-Jackson. They were anti-Masonic, then therefore they were anti-Jackson because he was a Freemason. If you're a Freemason, if you're in that group, it's very sacred to you, and you can't really talk about it, but you would defend it like crazy. It's very, very important. It's like a fraternity or like a secret group that these men belong to. So it's very important to them. So when that group goes defunct, the Whigs absorb those people, and that makes them more appealing to people, and they kind of are more accepting of the common man in that regard, I guess. And the Whigs say that gives them a little bit more clout as representatives of the common man. Okay, they criticize the Democrats. Remember this word here, cronyism, like your cronies, your pals. Remember our friends that Andrew Jackson had put into place that perhaps weren't qualified for the job or weren't literate or were crooked. Okay, so this is talking about, of course, the spoil system. Okay, all right, so in comes Martin Van Buren. He is endorsed by Jackson. Jackson's only going to have 2 terms like everybody else except for the Adamses. They each only had one, but only because they lost the second election. So Jackson's going to make sure he endorses Van Buren. And people were like, okay. Well, he wasn't Andrew Jackson, let's just say that. The people that really, really loved Jackson. It was a whole persona that went with it. Martin Van Buren, he was all right. But, you know, he was someone endorsed by Jackson. He had been his vice president, and he hoped that he would do good things, okay? And the Whigs were scratching their heads trying to find somebody that they could come up with to run against Van Buren. Now, this is like a real legit election here where parties are putting forth nominating someone as their candidate to go. So it's a little bit different than what we've seen before. Okay, so who do they end up with? The Whigs, sorry, the Whigs. They end up with Tippecanoe and Tyler too. So you have William Henry Harrison, the hero of the Battle of Tippecanoe. Okay, Tippecanoe, and we're gonna see what happens with that. Okay, so Van Buren is able to pull it off. He is not so crazy in the popular vote. If you look there, 465 to 765 to 739. However, the Electoral College, he does have it beat pretty well. So that's good for Van Buren. Again, he is the first president born when we had been the United States. So now we're getting into that part of history where he was not born when we were just colonies or in the Revolution or what have you. And he was above average for intelligence and education, especially coming behind Jackson, who was pretty much self-taught. He was Van Buren, pretty smart. And again, here we call him a machine-made candidate, meaning what I just said, that you have political parties putting forth their candidate, the person that they think has the best chance of winning, so that their ideas are represented in the White House. Okay, and again, with Van Buren, since he was so close to Jackson, he's going to inherit a lot of the same enemies that he has. So guess who's probably not going to like him? You got it, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, and John C. Calhoun. Okay. All right. So during his time in office, there's going to be a couple of rebellions in Canada. Still some issues going on there. Nothing major. There is an unrelenting economic issue. We talked about the panic. It is flat out a bit of a depression. Things are not good with the banking system, and over speculation and all those problems are still going on. And the issue of Texas is going to become a problem as well. Okay, what causes this panic in 1837? We talked before about the panic of 1819, and that was over speculation. Well, guess what? It's still a problem in 1837. So over speculation and a lot of get rich quickisms, they call them. So people saying, oh, come here, do this, plant that, look for oil, look for gold, look for this, look for that. And a lot of it is unfounded. So people are rushing here and there trying to, they're sinking all their money into one thing or another, and it's not really working out for them. So that's a problem. The wildcat banks, they are trying to help build up the canals, the roads, and things like that, and it spreads there into all of these things. So people are dumping their money into this money from the wildcat, quote unquote, wildcat banks into some of this infrastructure. The bank war and the specie seculaire are going to also be a problem, where he's saying, remember, the specie seculaire is when you had to buy public land with only metallic money, and not everybody has that, right? Not everybody has metallic money laying around to buy land. So that's going to become a problem. And also add insult to injury, some harvest issues. That never helps either because it's an agrarian society. Most people make their money in farming. Okay. So also too, girls, sometimes there's a ripple effect in the world. Two big British banks are going to fail, and that's going to become a problem for us with the ripple effect. We do a lot of business with Britain. We trade a lot with them. We do things with them, and certainly that's going to affect us if it's that big of a deal there. And it was a problem. So banks are collapsing. We're going to talk a lot about banks. What would happen during this time period is, girls, is the way they would, when we say a panic, people would literally panic when things were going bad with the economy and run to the bank. We call it a run on the banks. Literally, they call it a run on the banks. They would go and withdraw all their deposits. And we've talked about this in class before. But when a bank does not have deposits, it cannot really function as a bank. And what do banks do? They give loans so that people can grow their business. They give mortgages. So when none of this is going on, it kind of stops the flow of money. So it becomes a problem. Commodity prices drop. Commodity items are things that are where the pricing fluctuates day to day, like gold and silver and even corn and wheat and iron and oil. All those things are commodity prices. The prices fluctuate depending upon supply and demand and all of that. So those are going to drop. People aren't buying as much public land. Again, P.S. Who the heck has all this, 50 million gold bullions in their garage to go and get out and go buy a piece of land? Like, this whole idea of buying with metallic money is good. It's sound, but it's not always very possible. Okay. And girls, when nobody's spending any money, when banks don't have money and people don't have money, people don't buy stuff. When people don't buy stuff, factories close and people lose jobs. When people lose jobs, they have no money, and so on goes the cycle. Okay, we're going to talk about this again when we get to the Great Depression. This is certainly not the Great Depression, but it is definitely an economic crisis. Okay, this is the long bill. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what are the Whigs going to propose? They say, okay, credit. We need more credit. People cannot do business. They cannot be entrepreneur-like. They cannot start a manufacturing business or do any of this if there is not credit. So again, thank you, Andrew Jackson, for trying to kill the National Bank. But one of the things that the National Bank could do was establish credit. That's one of the things that Henry Clay wanted with the American system, so that people can be entrepreneurial and start their own businesses. Higher tariffs, that became an issue before too under Jackson with the nullification crisis, and subsidies, which are payments from the government for internal improvements, meaning the federal government gives the states money, subsidies for canals, roads, and such. Okay, so Van Buren, his response is what we call the divorce bill. Okay, meaning that we need to have separation of government and bank. He wants to divorce the two. These two entities should not be together. It's like separation of church and state. However, it's separation of state and bank. Okay, he wants an independent treasury, and the government would actually just not deal with not be side by side with its own bank. They would be two separate things. The government would literally lock its money in vaults. Okay, this is not popular. This idea was not popular, even within his own party. The Whigs hate it. Okay, it definitely, we know that the Whigs are for a national bank. Look at Henry Clay, people like that. They're for a national bank, so they don't like it. This independent treasury bill finally passes in 1840, and our friends, the Whigs, are going to repeal it a year later. And again, it's going to come up again in 46. This situation, girls, with banking is going to go on and on, back and forth until the Civil War. Okay, there's going to be in different places in the North and the South, they're going to be issuing their own currency. There's going to be inflation. There's going to be issues, and it's going to be something we're going to talk about up until then. In the meanwhile, actually, we're going to pause here. I can only record 15 minutes at a time. We're going to stop here, and in the next segment, you can watch and listen about Texas, how Texas is annexed, how it secedes from Mexico and what goes on with that. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next segment about taxes.